Hello everybody. I can see the number of participants increasing. So good morning. You're all currently on mute. We're trying to sort of manage this in a sensible way, but there will be opportunities to speak later. So good morning. I hope this finds you well in these pretty difficult and strange times. So I'm glad that we can use this webinar as an opportunity to connect and chat and discuss about the Land App. For those of you who are at the last Southern Facilitators Group meeting, we all recall that we spoke about organising a webinar about the Land App and how it's being used both in terms of facilitation groups but also natural capital assessments. So very grateful to both Jenny Phelps and Dan Gearing from from Southwest Flag, who are with us today to talk about how they're using the Land App. And also thanks to Tim Hopkin for arranging the webinar for us this morning. And hopefully it'll all run smoothly and we can all keep in contact and see things going. So there's going to be two presentations. So Jenny's going to talk about the work they're doing for 20 minutes, and then Dan is going to give us a demonstration of how they're using a Land App, so you'll be able to see that on your screens. And then we've got about sort of 15 minutes at the end to ask questions. So I think to keep things going, we'll keep everyone muted for the time being, but at the end, obviously, we can open up the call to everybody to ask questions. But there's also a chat function. So I think along the bottom of your screen, you should see an icon that says chat. So what you could also do, if you have questions as you go along, if you want to type them in, then we can at least record them and make sure nothing's missed, and we can go back to them at the end, or perhaps maybe after Jen's presentation, we can go back to the questions about her presentation. And then obviously we can kind of follow this up after the webinar. We can send some emails around and see how best to discuss. So yes, that's great. Thank you all for coming along. I think that probably most people are now here now. So I will hand over to Jenny to talk about the work they're doing with the Land App. Thanks, Jenny.
Oh, thanks, Bruce. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, and I'm sure the others can as well. That's great.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm just about to do a presentation that I was presented to the advisor, a thematic working group for DEFRA, and I hope it's of interest. And apologies if any of you have seen it before, but hopefully it's quite a lot of information, so hopefully it'll be useful even if you have seen some of it before. Basically what we want to do is to be able to show how we've been using the Land App to help DEFRA to work through its priorities, its theme priorities around the new environmental land management scheme. Obviously, we see there as being a huge opportunity for this in the current situation using countryside stewardship, but obviously we've had a key focus on being able to further develop the functionality of the Land App with lovely Tim, who's on the call, obviously, to be able to see how we might be able to make it as a real platform for investment, which I'll talk about in a minute. So obviously through the ELMS process, we're looking at the 6 different thematic working groups, which is developing a land management plan, about the role of advice, which is all the facilitators and advisors will be obviously very key, and you'll know how essential your role is, I'm sure, about trying to present innovative mechanisms to DEFRA, which is actually, they consider innovative mechanisms being applications as well as different frameworks for delivery, but actually the innovative mechanism is about the functionality of the tool, about how spatial prioritisation might be addressed, and that's quite key because I think there's a lot of consideration about how we streamline and enable people to understand better about strategic priorities and how local communities and farmers can actually benefit from the understanding of high-level strategic priorities, and how we bring all this particularly together so that we can actually all work as strong partnerships. And we see that the Land App creates a perfect platform for that, to be able to start that collaboration. And obviously at the heart of all of that, we want to be able to make sure that we can facilitate multiple opportunities and payments out to farmers that both basically are complemented by the government's ELM programme, but obviously we'll talk in more detail about how we facilitate blended finance through that. And for those of you who've read the discussion document, we've already obviously got a sort of framework around sort of like government thinking that there may be 3 different tiers going forward, which is going to be tier 1, which will be available to all farmers, we hope, where we hope we can make a case for the Land App being something that actually enables every farmer to be able to verify their natural capital data. We want to be able to use that as a foundation for tier 2, which is a collaborative ambition, which looks very much around facilitation fund, and then obviously we then may be able to use blended finance to deliver the ambitions under tier 3. So this is quite a complex slide, and what I'll do in the next 20 minutes is try and understand help you, enable you to understand the sort of like the simplicity and the complexity of it, and hopefully how it makes the case and the rationale and uses the Land App as this key tool to be able to be simple, forward-facing to farmers. Everything you hear within government is always very much about, oh, it must be simple, forward-facing to farmers, but actually to justify the investment in natural capital recovery from multiple sources, and to be able to create mechanisms where people are paid for delivering public goods. We must be able to create that justification from a platform of science. So this is our endeavour through our trial to be able to solve that in collaboration with our amazing partners, which include Ordnance Survey, obviously Tim at the Land App, and Esri. And obviously now we're moving on to work with the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology at Rothamsted. So basically what we're looking at is the ability for farmers, which Dan will demonstrate to you later, about how they can pull their land into the Land App, so the mapping into the Land App, and understand how that's spatially prioritised. That's in the bottom left-hand corner. And then what we're hoping is that through the tool, we're able to show you how that can then be verified. And we're obviously starting to advocate the translation of the existing land use into UKHabitat mapping, which I'll come on to in a bit, in a little moment. And then how we can actually start to look at the state of the land use and the management codes of land use and habitats across the landscape and catchments, that enable us then to be able to attribute function to that land, so we can look at how public goods are delivered, and then obviously then we can justify collaboration and investment from things like catchment partnerships and protected landscape partnerships, and county councils delivering climate action responses. Oh, gone the wrong way. So in our trial, what we've been doing is trying to particularly focus on two things. One was the Land App, obviously, development, and as this platform as a natural capital recording tool, and to develop a survey methodology. And what we discovered quite quickly is that there is a lot of data out there, but virtually none of it's verified. And this is a huge opportunity for farmers and advisors to be able to verify the state of the natural environment, to be able to create that platform that's accurate for investment. And we also wanted to demonstrate the essential role of an advisor, not only in helping to enable the farmers to understand how to code and map their land and make potentially an annual submission, like a basic payment of a natural capital map, but how those those advisors can then help the farmer understand all these multiple developing opportunities for investment, which might come from public, private and third sector, so carbon sequestration obviously being one, or net gain finance and others, which we'll talk about in a minute. So through the process of our trial, with our 20 farmers, we've been taking environmental data, and that we've been asking Tim and his developers and various other people to bring their GIS data into the Land App, and we've been taking our opportunity to go out on farms and actually start to record the habitat types across the farms. And we've done that also with 5 communities to be able to see whether we can actually create complete maps across the landscape that are UKHabitat coded, so that we can start to verify that. What we discovered was that using ArcGIS systems, that it's a really easy way for us to be able to preload maps with the help of Dan, to be able to preload maps onto our phones, and then to go out onto the farms and to be able to click on each field parcel and to be able to verify it, and then to be able to make sure that we can code it in relation to what the land use and management is. So the reason why we've been using UKHabitat mapping as a classification is because we wanted one single platform from which we could actually enable public goods and ecosystem services to flow. And the UKHabitat mapping is something that's been developed over the last 20 years by some very clever ecologists, particularly from Accountability, Bill Butcher and various others, who have actually created a really amazing system that is hierarchical, that enables everyone to go out and start to map habitat types and land use, and it includes arable and all different management codes for every single type of habitat type. But it enables the translation from existing codes that we've used before, so agri-environment, farm environment plan, based on habitat surveys, the European mapping systems and national vegetation classifications. So we can amalgamate all of those different ways that the land has previously been mapped and converted into UKHabitat mapping. So it's really simple because it enables us to take each type of habitat type and give it a simple letter that gives it your first stage of its habitat classification. And then as it progresses through the different levels, you can attach different codes to be able to look at the different detail of that habitat type, so whether it's calcareous or whether it's neutral, or whether it's deciduous woodland or coniferous. But what's really clever as you go down the sequential layers is that you can then also include, as I said, different arable options, different arable, any particular type of option that you might put on farmland, but also it can include management codes and other features such as historic environment and whether something is grazed or fenced. So within a very short space of time, you can start to create a huge amount of information and data about a field parcel that actually is kept, that data is kept in a very simple, manageable form of code from which you can start to analyse potentially the function of that land and how the land management plan might be developed to improve and help transition towards more regenerative farming practice. So this builds on the work that we've done since 2013 as part of the DEFRA Ecosystem Services pilot that we ran. And DEFRA already acknowledges that all the different habitat types actually deliver different ecosystem services. And our view is the fact that this is a really good way of attributing function because it includes the provisioning services, that's food and fibre, and obviously can include all the other regulating cultural services that we know to be vitally important to the functionality of our landscapes. So the UKHabitat mapping within the Land app enables us to create this future platform from these different habitat types. So we see the key role of advisors going forward as a way of being able to explore UK Hub as a platform. Now, this is really important because going forward with nature recovery networks and the Environment Act, there's a requirement for local authorities coming forward to deliver local nature recovery strategies. They are already many wildlife trusts and the Environment Agency, for example, are pulling together nature recovery networks to deliver the requirements for net gain. And actually what we need is a way to be able to verify and make sure that that data is accurate and up to date and create a justification for investment in farmland to replace basic payment scheme. So we've seen through our trial that the Land app creates an opportunity for us to create this simple forward-facing mechanism for farmers to verify what will be essential data for local authorities, particularly and other government bodies, to deliver their duty around the Environment Act, and underpin the opportunity for us to understand the real state of the environment as quantified and qualified by farmers and communities, and then create the platform for environmental data that is going to underpin the delivery of the 25-year Environment Plan and United Nations Sustainability Goals. So Dan will talk to you a bit more about how the Land Act works, but the way that we see it at the moment is that there is an opportunity for farmers to contextualise their land. They're able to share their data with neighbours. We particularly use a framework that works along water bodies, with parishes and farmers working together along water bodies. And the reason for that is so that we can manage soil, and to manage soil we need to manage water, and we need to see how in the landscape we can actually look at all the priorities within that landscape. So it might be a protected landscape, or it might be the fact that it's catchment requirements or flood measures. And we can look at the whole landscape and catchment as a whole, and farmers can understand what role their land can play within that, including the food provisioning. So we see that it's an opportunity for the advisors to enable farmers to sign up to Land app as a platform for being able to do this data collation, that we can actually see a way that advisors might want to start to use ArcGIS or other mapping systems to be able to help map and verify that information by handheld devices as they walk across the farms. We want to demonstrate to government that without support, farmers and communities find it challenging to know how to respond to climate change and and all the other challenges that we face at the moment, and that actually having a really good platform from which we can understand our environment, the food provisioning that we have, and how we can actually blend the finance to support that is really important, and help deliver the duties of all the different organisations and individuals that are out there, including blended finance from corporate organisations who might want to invest in sequestering carbon. So as a result of the work that we've been doing, this is an estate that has 12 tenanted farmers. We've been starting to create these joined up UKHabitat maps through the trial. It's been really well received by the farmers, that they can see how their land lies. We can start to create data analysis, as we were saying, through Esri, which enables us to look at what is missing within that landscape. Is it providing enough for pollinators? Is it providing, we hope to move on to the point where we can look at soil organic matter, and we can start to look at how we could build opportunities for regenerative agriculture, to look at underpinning ecological recovery. And that the idea might be that once you've created this platform for UK Hab mapping, that you can then start to create an annual land management plan that actually fills the gaps of that provisioning, and then that data becomes a verified form of data that then gets back to be re-verified and re-pulled behind Land Act, which Dan will explain more in future years. And as I said earlier, it really, at the moment, this is a real missing gap there, and none of the Nature Recovery Network maps that we have seen have been verified. It is all completely sort of scraped data from previous environmental information and CH land cover data and things like that. So what we think is really exciting is we've been working with the Wildlife Trust, who have been delivering the Nature Recovery Network, which I think will merge into and complement with these local nature recovery strategies. And what that enables us to do is to have that unverified data pulled behind the farms as well, so that we can then have that platform for verification. Our County Wildlife Trust, who has been doing this for our local nature partnership, has enabled us to then to fill in the gaps with the maps that they've been producing, so that we can then go onto the farm and see what people think is on the land, and then enable us to be able to map this land in more detail to those different hierarchical levels that we were explaining under UK Hab. We can also use this tool for countryside stewardship as well. I think that Dan will explain that a bit more later on. But we're talking about the ambition of what we think we can achieve with the tool. But obviously, there's a huge amount of functionality that is relevant to the current way that we are doing things like countryside stewardship. But I think the ambition really is for ELMS and ELMS design to cross across into the duty of local authorities and nature recovery networks, so that it doesn't just become another agri-environment scheme, and that farmers and communities can become much more connected for building resilience, food security, and mitigation from climate change. So in our ambition, we're trying to share really this opportunity for communities with their neighbourhood and community plans, to work together with farmers across water bodies to be able to map issues and opportunities that will link directly to their neighbourhood planning, that through the spatial layers that you can use through the Land app, that you can identify all your local partners quite easily. We're hoping to create some functionality around that, so that people can work out who are all the different partners that are interested in their local area, and actually can start to work and produce collaborative action, so that funding can actually be brought together, resource and expertise and social capital, to be able for farmers and communities to become resilient to climate change. And we see this as being a really good template for working. And obviously, as we collect the data, that the data can be sorted in any shape or form. So it can be sorted in field or parish or water body or district or county. It's a simulation of the data that is really important at the local level. And it enables people to take action for climate change. Of the 5 communities that we've been in through our ELMS trial, and we've done a previous 20 under another project, the Wild Project, that communities are really, really, really enthusiastic about having somebody to help them to understand how to take local action. A lot of people are suffering from ecological anxiety, and working better with their farming communities, particularly now with food security, is something that's very much on people's agendas. And our communities that we've worked with have found this a really useful tool as well. So the Land Act can be applied to being able to build neighbourhood and community mapping as well. So a lot of that builds on the work that we have done for the last 10 years using the integrated local delivery framework. This has become now a template for the international research that's been done under the Pegasus project, which is a system by which people can start to reintegrate themselves within the environment and natural world, and it's a mechanism for creating socio-ecological recovery, which I think is a great word. And our ELMS trial builds on the foundation of the work that we've been doing, and we hope that it creates a mechanism, as we've said, and we see the Land App as being a really key tool for enabling it to be simple, forward-facing, but to contain the amount of complexity that is required to enable the justification. And we hope that science is helping us now through CH and land use to create some of those attributions to ecosystem function from those land use codes. So what that enables us to do is to have this platform of blended finance, where effectively you've got the data at the base layer that you can actually of the farms and the landscapes that you're working on, or catchments that you're working on. We want ELMS to be the platform using UKHabitat mapping through, as I say, collations through the Land App, for us to be able to assimilate data on land use, but also issues and opportunities about how we can fix some of the issues that are out there in relation to water and sewage and flooding, and create other opportunities for all the different platforms, sustainable energy and food, and actually enable people to take action and through social capital and volunteering, and then integrate all the funding that's available through biodiversity net gain, or maybe reverse auctions coming forward, and carbon offsetting and green finance. So as advisors, we want to be able to help support and train people in a way that they can help make sure that they can realise all these opportunities at a local level. And that is much more simple than it actually sounds, but all these opportunities are arising. And we need to make sure that people on the ground, farmers and communities, are able to maximise the opportunities. And as advisors, we are the conduit for that opportunity, but we need this mapping platform to be able to realise those functions. So in a sort of like our ambition really is that this is a layer of data that goes forward to be able for local authorities to be able to start to assimilate different levels of socioeconomic data in line with delivering the United Nations Sustainability Goals and 25-year Environment Plan. It gives people the tools that they will need to act on climate change, and it enables us to be in an amazing position to be able to help facilitate that as advisors going forward and justify investment from the government and public, private and third sectors. So going back to the original slide, I hope that sort of shows you this sort of like the way that we perceive this as going round, or the opportunity for this to happen. Obviously, the government may decide that it wants to use different tools, but they certainly seem to be listening at the moment. And everybody that we present this to seems to think it definitely has some merit, and hopefully more than that. And as I say, local authorities are now starting to ask us to go and talk to them about how they might change their climate action fund, and other counties are starting to explore how they might use this mapping to be able to create the foundation for nature recovery networks and hopefully ELM. So it seems quite complex, but actually on the ground it's really a very practical way of walking the land, assessing the land, working with the farmer on the farm business, mapping the functionality of the land, creating that opportunity for data and data analysis, and then being able to look at the gaps and then feed that back through to the partners for strategic and appropriate landscape restoration of natural capital from all different payments, and then hopefully be able to review and refresh annually to be able to make sure that we're all delivering a better environment and quality food and supporting our food farming and countryside. So that's a run through of my presentation, and I hope it was of interest, and look forward to hearing Dan's and taking some questions after that.
Thanks, Jenny. That was very well done for giving us so much information in such a short space of time so coherently. So thank you very much for that. So I think there's been no questions on the chat function. Apart from someone did ask if we're able to share the presentation, and yes, of course, Jenny's kindly said we can share her presentation for you to digest at your own time after. So perhaps, yeah, Dan, if you're able to give us an overview of a practical demonstration of how you're using the Land App for us, yeah, till about 11:45, then we can open up the call for the remainder for people to ask questions. And as I say, please do feel free to write your question in the chat function in case you forget or want to ask at the time. So over to you, Dan. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you, Bruce, and thank you, Jenny, for giving us the roundup there. So, as said in the introduction, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the Land app, which should take about 5–10 minutes, just understanding some of the basic functions that Land app offers. And then I'm hopefully going to explore a bit further how you as farmers or you as facilitators can use this tool for collaboration across the landscape, for making plans, stewardship agreements, etc. And especially at a time like now where it's even more pressing that we need to be able to work remotely. I do believe Land app is, sorry, can you hear me? I do believe that Land app's in a very good position to try and help that collaboration across borders when we can't actually meet on a farm at the moment as present. So Land app's free to use. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it's a online GIS platform that's been developed by Tin Hopkin and the Geovation Ordnance Survey. Instantly when you log on, you can start generating a map. And ideally what we've been doing from our farm trials, and I highly recommend, is using this on the left-hand side, the import from Rural Payment Agency. And this instantly, using a simple 5-step process, gets you to download your Rural Payment Agency outlines onto your live map. The first 2 steps are just downloading the Google Chrome browser and the Google Chrome extension, which I already have downloaded. But this third link takes you directly into the Rural Payments account. If you've logged in already, perfect. And what that allows you to do is instantly download your land covers and hedge data, which I'm clicking this extension at the top right when I'm in the business overview page, automatically starts downloading onto Google Chrome that data file, which contains your land covers, your land parcel data, and any other information they may have, such as hedges. And you simply just drag that file from your Google Chrome browser onto the project and upload it as the new boundary. And what you'll see is rapidly, we've already got our work area, which is the farm area we're working on. But built into that is information about its field ID. So what the Rural Payment Agency currently has logged for your field ID number according to the Ordnance Survey grid reference. And all the field parcel data is kept down in data file format on the side. You also have the ability, if you wish, to rename those field parcels rather than using the long grid reference. So you can call it whatever you wish. And that data file will contain that field name for every project you then duplicate. Just a couple of quick functions before I start creating projects. So as I said, it's got Ordnance Survey maps in the background. It's also got Ordnance Survey Lite. So a couple of our farm members may be struggling with bandwidth. I highly recommend just going onto the Ordnance Survey Lite for obvious reasons in terms of size of the map in the background. But also you've got updated satellite imagery in the background, which is trying to be updated as possible. So for this one is 2020. There are some areas, I think, Tim, you might be able to answer better, that is still requiring a bit of an update, but I think they're in a very good position to keep those satellite images as up to date as possible. And you can use those for when you're creating projects. For example, you can see that in this map, you already know where those beetle banks are being held on this farm, for example. And not only base maps, the Land app's got a load of free access of map layers in the background, similar to those that are on Magic, such as flood zones and triple SIs, which are just open source data sets that allow that farmer or allow you as a facilitator to get more context about what's happening in that on that farm and where it lies in the area. So, for example, nitrate vulnerable zones may be a key thing if you're looking into a stewardship project, for example. Then what you can do is you can quickly duplicate that file. So once you've renamed the field parcels into a number of templates that the Land app's got preloaded. So it's got environmental stewardship, which is the historical stewardship, HLS, ELS, and OELS, and the current countryside stewardship, alongside basic payment scheme and a whole other host of different templates that you can use. But by duplicating into a basic payment scheme, this is where you first get to see the land cover data that was stored from the RPA's account. I'm just going to turn on the back layers because they can make it a bit messy. But you can see the hedge data that I also brought down is displayed on here. So like Jenny was saying within our trial, we're ground truthing a lot of this. And a lot of these hedges, although they're correct most of the time, some of them may be a dry stone wall covered in bramble. So our trials really opened us up to actually not completely trusting the satellite the whole time, and it does require someone to be walking those fields and double checking what is correct. Just for the sake of time, I'm just going to flick to a project that we created for a previous presentation that's at the same point as where we are now. I just don't want to really deal with such a large farm. But what we're trying to do is get an understanding of what's happening on the ground in terms of a baseline map. So I first duplicated that project into a basic payment scheme, and then I can assign each of those fields to be different croplands or the different types of arable crop. So within your basic payment project, you can assign those. And all you have to do is, if one of these is incorrect, so the RPA thinks this is a permanent grassland field, you can change and assign use of that by just clicking there and changing it. Maybe it is actually a temporary grass. And just by using the project template for BPS, you only have access to those basic payment scheme projects. And once we've done that, we can also add in tracks, other ineligible features using 4 main functions. So the Land app has built in, it has a buffer, merge, split function, which allow you to change the geometry of those field parcels really quickly and really simply. So for example, if I wanted to put a buffer around this field, I could simply just add the buffer function, click side 2, which is the inside of the field, and change the width of that buffer quite simply. So for example, there what I've done is I've used the shape of the polygon, created a buffer. Currently, that buffer is sitting on top of the field pass in the background, and you can tell this by clicking on that middle buffer. The dots around the outside of that field are highlighting outside the buffer, and that buffer is sat on top. Now, the functionality of Land app means that you can subtract that buffer from the field parcel area. So any option on the ground that you're putting that isn't doubling up allows you just to punch a hole in the polygon behind. And it's so simple. I'll show you quickly. It's literally click on the buffer, click subtract, and any polygons in the background of that field are now going to have the area of that buffer minus from it. So now when I select that interior buffer, you can see that there's 2 polygons that are side by side and aren't on top of each other. Now, so that's for the basic payment scheme template. And I know many of you may be working on countryside stewardships, whether it's for your own farms or whether it's for a client's farm. You can duplicate your basic payment scheme project and create a countryside stewardship application. It's exactly the same functionality, apart from the feature details when you add and assign use. Instead of it being the basic payment options, this time it can be anything. It's anything on the countryside stewardship application. So for example, if you wanted to put this field into overwinter stubble, you assign it just by using the assign use. And the functionality of Land app allows you to instantly access the guidance that are on the website from the RPA, so the .gov website for basic overwinter stubble. You get to see the requirements. It's that transparency that really is key to developing a really good stewardship project. So if you're sharing this stewardship project with a client or with your agent, it's really, really quick. So I've started developing this project, but at the top right over here, you have a collaboration function. This function is simply just adding an email address to someone who is on, someone who you believe can, someone who can be invited to collaborate with you on the farm. I currently can't add an email on this, I've just realized, because this is one of the maps that Tim made the other day. So this isn't one of my own. So there would be an option to add a editor or a read-only collaborator onto the file. But all those people on the list can then collaborate and get involved in the mapping of this farm. And then also, yeah, adding different functions such as buffering. I'll quickly show you its capabilities in terms of the simple one-sided buffer. So you've seen me do a buffer around the whole edge of the field, but there's other functionalities such as the snap to line function, which just keeps all the geometries nice and tidy. But also, if you wanted to add a buffer just around one side of the field, you can simply just use the geometry that's around the outside. So I've only clicked once, and you can see the snap to line function is actually holding that line to the outside of the field. Double clicking, I've created the line. And then also I can then just add a buffer to that line, which is only following the edge of that field parcel. So really quick to get on the ground what's happening. And you can do the same for tracks. If you're marking off where your tracks are, exactly the same feature. And then you use that subtract function to punch that hole in the polygon behind, so you haven't got any overlap. What we're doing within our Elms trial, as Jenny touched on, is getting farmers to input their current stewardship options and their current basic payments, so understanding their farm in mapping systems that they currently understand, which in that sense is stewardship or environmental stewardship like HLS. And then what we can do is we can translate that current stewardship options or that current stewardship or the current basic payment options into a one-size-fits-all habitat map, which is in the form of the UKHab. Now, currently, to do that translation, we have to take the file off Land app. However, we're in the discussions with the developers that automatically will translate that like I do here, where I duplicate the project from Countryside Stewardship into a UKHabitat map, and it auto assigns the habitats that are referenced from the basic payment scheme and the agri-environment scheme option. So for example, this field, which was a cropland under basic payment, which was in spring wheat, that detail is transferred over into the UKHabitat, which is a C1C, which is cereal crops. But also we then get the farmer to input those secondary codes, which give us context to how that bit of that area of land is being managed. So for example, you add the secondary code for ploughed or bare ground, which give you just a bit more idea of what's happening on the ground. And same again for those margins that I drew on the Countryside Stewardship, they're duplicated into the correct habitat classification. And Jenny mentioned verifying data. Now, there are going to be cases and instances where we already have an idea of what's happening on the ground. We just need to work out a functionality that can preload this data. So preload the UKHabitat map, where the farmer can just log on and confirm and amend what we have down for their land, rather than starting from scratch. It'll be so much more powerful and engaging if we can develop a mechanism that they can confirm and amend what's happening on the ground, plus adding these secondary codes, which just context to that what's happening within that land. So just before I go on to the wider picture, there's one function that I've forgot to mention, which is the estate report. So once you've created your stewardship project, your basic payment scheme, and if necessary, your UKHabitat map, the land app for your farm level can give you, and this is still under that tier 1 that Jenny was speaking about, your farm level payments, trying to improve the way you farm your land, the way we're producing food, and improving natural capital. We have this estate report function at the top, which is simply just a summary table for everything that you've created on your farm as a project. So for example, under basic payment scheme, these are all the different options we had, the number of different fields, plus that area. And it's these type of area summaries, when we get onto habitat maps, so the areas of habitats we have, these type of area summaries that we, within our ELMS trial, are envisaging the payment can be based upon, because you've got a clean set of data with accurate readings about how much area of habitat there are. And if we can involve satellite imagery to ground truth that the areas, so for example, if the satellite disagrees that my margin is here and it says it's along this back edge, we need to find a mechanism that flags that up. But at least then the farmers are in control of their data, they're in control of how it looks and how they're managing it. So just before I round up, and hopefully that's shown you most of the functionality of Land App, I just want to show you that this is just looking at a farm on a single frame. They can't see what's happening around them. But what you can do is you can, once you've shared, you can download your data package and have a facilitation fund map, which shows you all the different farms that are involved in your facilitation fund, for example. So not only will you be able to see your farm, you'll also be able to see what's happening over the hedge, which is really important for making some on-ground informed decisions, whether that's where you should put your next pollen and nectar mix. Does it join up with the neighbours, or is there an opportunity to convert this area of cropland up here, or this area of woodland to be more beneficial to the wider context. So sharing how your land is being used is going to be really, really key in developing these natural capital plans, especially when it comes to this tier 2 and tier 3 payments where they're trying to do landscape scale restoration. But because you've got an annually updated map, so each year I can come on and update how my management's changed. So say next year I changed from ploughing and I went to minimum tillage, I can update just that field saying that I've changed my management strategy to try and improve natural capital, and I resubmit that map. But I haven't actually had to do all those paper maps that we're doing at the moment. It's more digital, it's user friendly, and the power that we're going to have from having all these data files lined up where we can run landscape scale analysis is going to be really key. So I think in terms of the functions of Land App, that's pretty much me done, unless Tim, you've got any other interjections that you want me to show. It's just a really simple user interface. It's allowed us in our ELMS trial to excel a lot further than we thought we would be able to, simply because it's the simplicity of the design that allows us to do so.
Thanks, Dan. That was really good. And myself personally, I've dabbled with Land App, but not really got to grips with it. So it's good to see the the capabilities. There's obviously lots to be able to do, and I suppose the more you use it, the more proficient you'll become. There's been a few questions on the chat function, which I think Tim has very kindly answered as we go along.
Okay.
So just for those of you that haven't picked it up, Alison Field asked, who owns the data? Tim, do you want to just elaborate on that a bit more?
Yeah, definitely. So our license, well, firstly, I guess the most important thing to say is the Land app is really born out of my own personal frustration on our family farm. So I absolutely empathise with where everyone's at in terms of the need for mapping that makes life easier. And it's because, I guess, to some extent, I'm an end user in my own right. We believe as a company that you should own the data that you put into the software. So our license agreements state that, you as the map owner own the data, and it's you who chooses who has access to it through the collaboration function. So that's basically the point. We despite the fact the software is entirely free, we say that you own all of the data, and that isn't going to change. It's just kind of what we believe is the right way of doing things.
Can I just interject on that as well, Tim? So as Jenny was saying in the presentation, is the fact that the farmer's in charge of the data, but if there was an opportunity for farmers to be able to sell that data as a product to the wider catchment, for whether it's replacing basic payment at 120, 150 pounds per hectare for that yearly submission, that gives us the opportunity to replace the current basic payment, keep farmers getting that payment, but the data then goes into a wider data set. And yeah, I think the way Land app's designed is perfect for that, because it gives the option. It gives, you're still fully in control of the data. You choose who collaborates. However, if you wish to get on the platform for natural capital, selling your land for natural capital improvement, you'd be able to sell it in a package that people understand in terms of that GIS platform that they built already.
Yeah, good point, Dan. And actually, there's a second point that I often get asked, which is also worth clarifying. Sort of on touching on that piece, there are a huge amount of new market opportunities that are becoming available for landowners. So think like biodiversity net gain as an example, where developers pay for environmental uplift, or indeed water companies who are looking to fund new schemes around river courses. So we're at the Land app, we're looking to help enable that connection between the landowner and the demand, the person who wants to basically pay for services. And although we absolutely do not sell your data, absolutely do not do that, but what we do is if there's a 20-kilometre radius around a development zone and it overlaps with a farmer's field boundaries, in the Land app over the next few months, we're looking to proactively notify the farmer and say, by the way, did you know you happen to be in a zone eligible for biodiversity net gain? Click this button to connect to the scheme. And that's when you can get connected to the likes of David Hill at the Environment Bank, or whoever it might be, the local authority, to access those new funding opportunities. So it won't be that the data gets sold, absolutely not. You own the data, but you'll be notified of new opportunities, and then you can opt into them, basically. So that's also an important piece to clarify.
Yeah, it's great, because I was just gonna, because I know Tim, you've already started building up a picture of the facilitation funds that are happening around the UK, and it's that ability, as soon as you download the RPA field boundary, and it gives you like a shape of the cookie cutter shape to like go down and look at any hidden layers that may be there, so signpost you to the correct facilitation fund, any CABA groups you may be involved in, and those opportunities for natural capital improvement. It's just going to be, I can't wait to see how it all develops, to be honest.
Yeah, Dan, have you got the facilitation fund map on your account?
I just need to get it up now. Oh, have you taken permission from me? Let me
no.
Let me try. Let me try again.
Just while you sort that one out, Dan, just looking through the chats again. So Tracy has asked, how do you take into account a field changing with time, e.g. bare ground when mapped, but serial 2 minutes later? So you mentioned the code. How do you sort of cope with the constant changing nature of farmland?
Yeah, I'll answer. I mean, Dan, have you got anything in place to map that out on your side? Because, yeah.
So in terms of the dynamic aspect of the farm environment, I suppose what we've been doing with our Elms trial, it's been a freeze frame of what we saw when we were on our trial. But I think the great thing is giving the farmers the option. It's not. We don't want to know what the farmland is at its worst, which maybe when it's just been ploughed. We want to know what it is on a yearly basis. So as long as we can quantify the average habitat that's on the ground, so in 4 weeks' time, that ground, or 2 weeks' time, that ground's not going to be bare. It's just, yeah, it's a very good question. It's about the annual submission. So if we're envisaging it replacing the basic payment scheme, it's just going to be what's going to be on the ground on average throughout that year that you're being paid for it. I'm not sure if Jenny, you've got any further insight how to explain that without.
Yeah, I have. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? My thought was, in regard to that question, is that I think that there will be huge opportunities. Just going back a little bit to what was just said, but I think, and obviously the dynamic nature of the agricultural landscape is something that has obviously been at the heart of what we've been trying to solve, and all these complex opportunities which are coming on board, which may go through different mechanisms. Some of those, simply to the farmers, some through different organisations and individuals. But I think what will happen, because there is some concern over inappropriate change of land use to maximise some of these opportunities in a single issue form rather than in a sort of more complex and multi-objective form, is that I think through the local nature recovery strategies that the local authorities will have a duty to create the ambition as to what is appropriate within their counties, and that will include the landscape character and guidelines, the national character areas potentially, and all the different opportunities there are for things like natural flood management, and that might come forward in a baseline of opportunity as to what people think is strategically and sort of spatially appropriate for that landscape. And I think that what we think this will enable us to do is to understand those and actually enable the opportunities to be realised, but in a way that actually fulfills those multiple objectives. Because there is some risk in some of these mechanisms enabling things like tree planting in the wrong places. Obviously, we want lots of trees, but actually we need to make sure that they're not conflicting with other habitat types, or that they're not taking water out of catchments that might be too dry, all those sort of things. So I think it's really interesting, because what this does is it enables the farmers to really, as Tim says, it enables them to become connected to the partnership of shared problem solving. So rather than there being this hierarchical sort of strategic planning going on in isolation, and then the farmers being out there trying to make a living and doing what they're best, driven by the markets and by demand and by supermarkets, that actually it creates us an opportunity to have a shared vision and a shared functionality for that landscape that delivers all the outputs and provisioning and cultural and regulating services that we require. So I think that our key aim of our trial has been very much for policymakers to understand that the farmers and communities and people that we work with are a key element to that their businesses are vital to sustain for all of us. We now know with coronavirus that that's essential, and we should have known it already, or most of us did. But actually, that this is something that I think there will be some legislation around. Is that, what can happen within the environment, and there will be, I think, the accreditation of advisors to facilitate that if the ambition is seen and taken to its potential.
Thanks, Jenny. I'm just looking at, so Tim's obviously typing away, answering some questions. So I think for those who that have asked questions, there are some answers popping up. We'll certainly be able to share the recording of this, Gabrielle, this webinar, and all the presentations and bits and pieces.
Thank you.
Tim, is it worth unmuting people? We need to try and manage it so we can kind of keep it slightly ordered. But people are asking questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, people are welcome to unmute themselves individually and then mute themselves afterwards. So if anyone wants to ask questions, feel free.
I noticed Don actually asked a question around clusters. Can a farm map be linked to a cluster map? Essentially, if the farmer updates the farm map, will the cluster map be updated automatically?
Yeah, it's a great question, Don. So I think, Don, what you're referring to is, let's say you've got your farm map, and inside which you're doing all of your BPS and CSS and utility maps and whatever else. What would be great is if your, say, BPS automatically updated another map, so the two projects are linked, and essentially then Don or facilitators would be able to see all of the BPSs as an example for all of the farmers in the group. So the farmer just needs to update their map individually, and automatically the cluster group map is updated. Technically, we can do that. It's kind of how the software has been built, but we haven't yet built the front face for it. So great question, Don. Absolutely on the list, but not yet implemented. And It might be implemented over the next, I would say, potentially 4 to 6 months, because I can see how it could be used in a whole series of different ways. So not yet, but certainly we plan to implement it.
Thanks, Tim.
No worries.
So yes, if anyone's got any more questions they want to ask, there's a few more been answered on the chat function about identifying parcel numbers.
Can I ask a question?
Please do.
I just struggle with the mapping side, partly because of my age and not being so familiar with computer work. But is there someone out there that once we get going, and I've had a second look at the recording from today, that if I need some extra help, there's someone available?
Yeah, good.
Can I just make
yeah.
a comment, Tim, after you? You've got to go first. It's Jen here.
No, yeah, Jenny can help you do all that.
I was just going to say that part of the ambition that we have got is to try and help train and accredit advisors, or get the government to fund advisors to be able to accredit us all, so we can learn how to do this and set up training courses. Where Tim, I'm sure, is going to be setting up training courses on the Land Act. And also our lovely partners in UKHabitat Mapping will be setting up training courses. I mean, the ambition that we have at the moment is that there'll be 1,000 advisors out there who are running facilitation fund type groups under tier 2, and that would mean that there was total coverage across the landscape. And I think that it's a real opportunity for everyone to be able to do that. But I think we will definitely still be able to do this by paper submission, so that, you know, you can always, a farmer could actually do this manually and then give it to an advisor or person who's more familiar with computer systems. Because I appreciate that I'm slightly older, and I know I find it less easy than some of my younger colleagues. So yeah, we're trying to make it adaptive as well. Sorry, Tim, did you want to say something? Yeah,
and on our side, so we provide in-app support for free. So actually, Dan, if you're still clicking about, oh, you've got it open, thanks. Yeah, so perfect. So we provide in-app support for free as well. We believe it's really important that the sector is able to, because everything's going to be digital for ELMS, and that's kind of just the way things are going to be. So we provide in-app support for free to help make sure you can get the most value from the software. And as Dan is also showing, we have a whole series of help articles that are available for free as well. So you can always, you know, if you get stuck, you feel free to search the help guides or ask us. We also run regular webinars as well. So it's just an opportunity for us to present the latest function that's being made available. We record those, and those are also available. So, and I think, you know, with Jen and Dan, we would love to run more of this kind of thing, kind of thought leadership pieces as well. So it's a bit more future forward looking about where the sector's heading. So basically, the point is we're not really a technology company. I know we've built tech, but it's more about how do we support an entire sector to move forward. That's what drives us, and technology is just an outcome of that. So yeah, we're here to help as much as we can, basically.
And I think to say, Tim, if I may, that we're also running a sort of parallel approach to the fact that we're going to be running some courses at the Farm Ed up at Ian Wilkinson's.
Oh, great, yeah.
So that we're going to be trying to offer 3-day courses for people to upskill in all of this, hopefully funded independently from charitable trusts, environmental charitable trusts. So, you know, if the government is a little bit slow, which we hope they won't be because they seem to be very supportive, but if things take longer than we hope, then obviously we're going to get support from this from other sectors as well. So if you'll be interested in potentially being notified on a 2 or 3 day training course when we're allowed to do them again, probably in October, then please let us know, because we'd like to be able to cover off all the stuff that we've talked about integrated funding, about how we create these partnerships, and obviously some of the technical aspects as well. So thank you.
Jenny, but does that mean you're going to communicate with all of us 35 or 38 participants through email, or how will you communicate this ongoingness? Because that's the bit that gets lost when we do these sort of things.
Well, I think it depends on what structure people would like everyone to communicate through. I mean, I think there's a real role. I mean, I tend to do everything through Brian McDonald's Facilitation Fund in relation to advisors, and I think, Tim, you've been working with him as well on this. And I think it's about respect for people and how they've played their part. And actually, I know that Brian's worked really hard to try and, you know, maintain the Facilitation Fund through quite challenging times. And obviously, we want the Facilitation Fund to be extended up to the 2024, we're trying to make a case for basic payment not to be reduced until 2024, and that facilitation funds to run and countryside stewardship to run concurrent up to that. So I think that if there's other advisors who are external to the facilitation fund process, then obviously they could join. And I know Brian's quite often talks about forums, but I'm very happy to actually share, with Brian that opportunity. I mean, the other forum that we're using is the Ecosystem Knowledge Network, because they've been very supportive. So different platforms, but I think Bruce and Tim and I in our discussions about doing this webinar, we're all talking about, this is a real time for sharing and for learning, and all we're trying to do is share what we've done. I'm sure other people have done brilliant things that can complement it too, and collaboration seems to be the key for us. I mean, all of our partners have been amazing to come together, and I think we all feel that we're in something that's meaningful together, and we want to work with as many people as we can. So I think in answer to that, yes, we'll set up I'll talk to Brian and see what is existing advisor forums that he's got other than Huddle, because I think Huddle's a bit clunky, and if anybody's outside of that, then obviously I think they should be welcome to join, but that would be my starting point.
Yeah, and the other thing is for everyone who has a Land App account, which is, as Dan said, is entirely free and takes only a minute or two, we're actually going to be notifying all of our users of an upcoming webinar series, which Jenny is going to be presenting on, which is about the future of the sector. And it's really ranging from everything. So sort of this kind of thing, UKHab, looking at harmonised metrics with the Sustainable Food Trust, more information from the likes of water companies, supermarkets. So it's going to be an 11-week webinar series, one session every week, about the future of the sector. So for those who create Land App accounts or have Land App accounts, you'll all be notified of that series, and you'll be welcome to join that for free as well. So please feel free to sign up and create a free account and get access to more of that kind of information.
Thank you.
I think, Tim, as well, just to we're obviously, this has been coordinated from the Servant Facilitators group. I know not everyone on the call is perhaps a member, but another way of getting those links to webinars or upcoming events and saying, Jenny, we can use the group as a forum to share information and things that are coming through. There's about 35 of us, I think, that are currently within the group, representing about 20 groups across 7 South East England. So just another way that we can spread the word and kind of keep linked in that respect as well.
And I think we'd be really grateful for feedback as well, because, we are our second stage of our trial. So Dan and I have been writing up the first phase of our ELMS trial, but we can see a real sort of forward motion of travel, and we're really grateful for feedback. And if we share that report with you, and please do share it with others and give us all the feedback that you can, and how it might be adapted to your local area or utilised in your local area. So this is the ambition is that we create a strong partnership, to support government in a transition to a different way of managing our food and farming and environment that's beneficial to all of us.
I make a quick question to Jenny.
Yes, of course.
Hi there. You said earlier about doing data analysis through Esri, and I'm just wondering, for sort of mere mortals, how expensive is that system to do the data?
Well, I mean, Dan might be better to discuss it as well as me, but from our perspective, what we've learnt within the trial is that Esri has supported us for free through our trial. So I think that they're hopeful that there will be some recognition from government that their analytical power is something that would be very useful. So I don't know, Dan, if you want to jump in there, but that was our thinking is that it's something that will enable that functionality to be able to be quantified by local authorities and other public bodies. So I think Esri already have contacts with government. Is that right, Dan? And
exactly. So we've been very fortunate the fact that we've got Esri for free. It is a corporation and it does charge. I'm not sure exactly how much it costs, and they do have charitable licenses, but it's definitely worth noticing. I think, Don, that was you asking the question, that we've got another trial running down in the southwest of England with another part of our charity, and they're using QGIS to do the analytics. And so we're testing
which is me, probably.
It might be you. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So I think that the process is what we're looking at. We're looking at the methodology. The platform, however, is just being tested, because I suppose Esri has the advantage over QGIS of being cloud-based. So whether we can justify to DEFRA, that's the important bit. We're not losing data because we don't have to transfer anything because it's all auto-updating, is the only benefit I see over, and actually alongside that is we've got an Esri hub as well. But yeah, I think cost is something we have to discuss in phase 2 of our trial. It's been really good while it's free, but as a charitable organisation, I'm not sure how in the long term we can keep it sustained unless we can prove to DEFRA or funders its value. And from my perspective, as someone who uses GIS a lot, the power that you get from an Esri platform for public engagement, for all those heat maps and those data analytics for this natural capital assessments is huge. It's massive, but a lot of it you can do in Q. It's just a bit clunkier, and you need to be a wizard at FME, which I'm sure you are, or a similar type.
Not yet, but what I tend to find is I could potentially with QGIS export as a file as a Excel file, and then I've got the potential to import that into R.
Well, we've used R for our analysis and our exactly the same framework. So but Don, I'd be very keen for you to take my email address, and I just it would be okay just to hear a bit more about what you're doing with the Southwest for my own personal gain, and hopefully we can share some learnings from ours.
Yeah.
And I think the key thing is what we're trying to do is make sure that what we all collectively develop is able to connect to what everybody else is developing, or it can either translate, or it can share, or it can cross over, so that, if somebody else is using a different mechanism, that it's all still relevant, I think is the ambition. So, but yeah, we're really keen to do that.
Tim or Bruce, would you be okay to share Jenny and my email address to everyone who's on this call, just in case anyone has any questions of any sort?
I was just thinking, Dan, if Tim, I think you've got the list of all attendees. We'll make sure that everyone that's attended the webinar has a full list of contact details of presentations, and also there's been a few links posted in the chat section, so we'll make sure that they're all circulated in an email after. So Tim, perhaps I can speak to you after about getting that set up.
Yeah, no problem at all, Bruce. Yeah, absolutely fine.
Okay, thank you. I'm just watching the time. I know probably we're not all dashing out over, obviously, for various reasons, but has anyone got any more burning questions they'd like to answer or discuss?
Can I just say something? Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Just so Mike Waite from Surrey Wildlife Trust, and I chair our biodiversity working group on our nature partnership as well. I'm actually. Jenny mentioned the nature recovery networks and the work the Wildlife Trust are doing, and I've been sitting on that working group as well. And I just endorse everything she said about different data systems, different collection systems for habitat data across the country. We recognise that this is it is a real problem getting everything compatible and consistent, and I just see that the land app here is really going to be, a way to cut through all that, and I couldn't endorse it more, really. Different local record centres have different access agreements. People can't get hold of data for whatever reason, and this really is an opportunity to get through that, I think.
Well, I think the real key thing there is that, we were lucky enough to just coincidentally get trained in UKHabitat mapping about a year ago when it came out. I put all my team on a UKHab mapping, and when we did our ELMS trial, we were thinking, how do we map natural capital and public goods? And actually, it just UKHabitat mapping for us, it's just such a perfect platform, as I've said several times. And I think exactly that, that it was this idea. There's so many different forms of mapping and assessing the land. Yeah. And the fact that what we've done under our trial is to ask Tim to put the UKHab mapping into the land app, which then I think will be absolutely brilliant. And if there's things that people think it's a good idea to use UKHab, then I think that would be a really good way of supporting this initiative, because most of the people that are in that world of nature recovery mapping and stuff like that see it as being a really good platform. Juliet Hines, who developed our nature recovery network here in Gloucestershire, she's translated all of her work into UKHab. And what's really brilliant, which I haven't been able to share with you, but it's really amazing, we've done these community maps, which have been working with farmers and the communities of their green spaces, and now because UKHab can map urban and peri-urban and attribute all the different functions, all the different management codes and all the things, you can create these amazing maps. And then we
Yeah.
can drop the issues and opportunities, so we can look and see how we can actually fix all of the things around them with all the partners. But it's really visual, and they're really, really brilliant. And
Yeah.
so where we haven't got that verified data, we can pull your Nature Recovery Network map in UKHab as an unverified layer. And then the farmers and communities can go out and verify it and create maps that would link in then to neighbourhood and parish planning and to local plans, and to be able to create proper local mitigations for development and other human pressures to deliver the 25-year environment plan. So is Dan Dan's putting the map up? Is that so Dan's put so this is the map that we've produced for Geiting, which is one of our case study parishes. And you can see this is verified data that Dan's showing on the left-hand side. And if you look on the right-hand side where it's not hashed, you can see the unverified data. So we've been able to do the whole parish. And obviously we can link those parishes how we like, along water bodies or within landscapes. And then actually we can all go out. And what's been brilliant in these community projects, building on the Wild project, which we did since 2013, is that the communities have got so much knowledge, and they find it so enjoyable, and to actually go out there and actually be actively involved in mapping their community and working with their farmers and creating these sort of like resilience plans and working out where they can put local food and local energy and, you know, all of this sort of stuff, and infrastructure that they need and all of that. And it's just a missing link, and we've been going on about it for quite a long time, but you know, neighbourhood and community planning basically, you know, haven't been linking with environmental delivery. And if we are to deliver the 25-year environment plan, United Nations Sustainability Goals, and make Elm be what it has the opportunity to be, then we have a real opportunity to create this platform for everyone to contribute going forward, and to act on climate change. I mean, I know we're focusing very much on the issues at the moment on the coronavirus, but that's focusing people's, you know, real understanding of the need for resilience. And we think that this creates a real sort of like foundation for hopefully making us resilient to that going forward as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant. And thank you, Jenny, Dan and Tim, for all of your input this morning. And I think it worked really well. It's good to be able to have these meetings, even though we're not able to travel. So I think given the time, as I say, we'll make sure we communicate with everybody who took part in the call and send the relevant links. And I think keeping in contact going forward is going to be absolutely key. As we've said many times, this is going to be a kind of shared endeavour, and all kind of working towards this as one. So we'll work out the best ways in which we can stay in contact. Please all do stay safe for the time being, and hopefully we'll be able to see each other all soon. So from me, thank you very much, and thanks for our people who've presented today, and Tim for organising. It's been really helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you for everyone who's interested in our work. Thank you.
Yeah,
Cheers.
Brilliant.
Great.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you all.
Stay safe. Bye.
Thanks, Tim.